Hello and welcome to the fourth program in the series of Trees, the Silent Sentinels. I'm Sherwood McCaskie. As always, I'm glad that you have chosen to spend the next 30 minutes with my guest. In last week's program, we introduced the silk cotton tree and talked about its associated mysticism. This week, we shall look at another tree in Barbados that is considered to be sacred and occupies sacred spaces around the island. We will also look at the Cannonball tree. Historian Trevor Marshall begins like the good teacher, pointing out the errors of his students.
You can see here in Queen's Park, okay, the Baobab, and not as the sign says, the Baobab tree. It is B-A-O-B-A-B. So that sign here in Queen's Park needs to be amended and changed. As a matter of fact, in Antigua they call the tree the Baobab, B-E-A-R. So the sound is A, Baobab.
Any discussion of trees in Barbados is incomplete without mention of the Baobab tree. This national treasure is very rare on the island. We actually have only about 6 or so trees as recorded by John Rashford, but there are 2 which are exceedingly mature. Now the largest Baobab tree we have on the island is located in the Queen's Park area.
That is a separate story. It's what? About 40 meters around, largest tree in the island.
This tree is certainly a natural wonder. It has a trunk of 55 feet in circumference and has to be seen to be believed. To give an example of the size of this tree of great distinction, it requires 18 adults and 9 children joining their outstretched arms to cover its circumference. While we did not have the adults, thanks to the teachers and keen pupils of the Deacon's Primary School, we were fortunate to have several pupils joining outstretched arms to demonstrate its circumference.
And the second largest tree is right here at Warren's. The Warren's Baobab tree was measured at 14.25 meters in 1995, and at current, .29. Yeah, it's amazing. At present, we have now measured the tree. This is 2015, and the circumference is 15.29 meters. So that's actually an increase of about 1 meter, yes, which is quite a lot for a tree. As you most know, most trees are less than 1 meter in circumference in total. So the tree is definitely still growing.
There are others up by Mount Wilton in St. Thomas.
The Baobab tree is unmistakable. It has a large bulging trunk and is quite comfortable for you to climb and sit in it. Carla assumes a lofty position. From there, she talks about the tree's origin and the significance.
Now, the significance of the Baobab tree is not only due to its unusual size and beauty, because it is very beautiful, but also because of its origins. Now, this tree is believed to have originated from the slave trade in Africa. Now, we're not sure whether the tree was actually brought over with the slaves themselves, or whether it was brought as a seedling or seeds by some of the slave traders. Now, an estimate of the age of this tree in Warrens puts it at 277 years old, which makes it one of the oldest trees that we have remaining in Barbados. Now, the tree in Queen's Park is actually a bit older, and currently that tree would now be about 322 years old as well. Now, in Africa, the Baobab tree has many uses. The cork-like bark is fire resistant and is used in the preparation of cloth and other materials. The leaves are used as condiments and also used medicinally as well. Now, in addition to use in Africa, it's also used by the Aborigines in Australia.
Now, let us go back to what is believed to be the home of the Baobab tree, We will look at its use there and beyond.
There was a certain significance to the baobab tree in Africa. In some regions, some tribes believed the tree to be quite sacred. Now, you would often find a baobab tree planted in the center of a village, and whenever there are important matters to discuss, the village would meet around the tree, and that's the location that they would use to discuss those matters. Now, some other tribes, they believe that the tree, if they buried their dead within its trunk, the spreading branches which spread above it would protect those members that have passed on. There are a number of other interesting tales associated with the baobab tree. One of them is that if you eat the flower of the tree, you will be attacked by a lion. Now, clearly that's not a possibility in Barbados because we don't have any lions roaming around to attack people, but that lion could easily be replaced by a large dog, a cow, a sheep, or even a goat. Now, one other interesting story is that if you take water and you soak the seeds from the baobab tree and then you consume that water, you will be safe from the attack of crocodiles. Again, it's not quite the same in Barbados because we lack those crocodiles, but clearly drinking the water after soaking the seeds may be a good thing to do before swimming. Now, a little known fact about the baobab tree is that this tree which we have right here at home in Barbados is actually the tree that was used as the tree of life in The Lion King. And after hearing about all the many uses for its leaves, its fruits, etc., you can certainly understand why it would be referred to as the tree of life.
We have heard about its use as a food and how its leaves have been used. But its utility goes beyond that. Though appalled by how it was used down under, that is in Australia, you will be amazed at how this tree literally provided shelter for many around the world.
But the tree itself is host to many species of animals in Africa and people as well. Now, large mature trees, such as this one, are usually hollow in the center. And there is one that is actually south of Derby in Australia that was used as a prison for Aboriginal convicts who are on their way to Derby. And that prison actually still stands and is a major tourist attraction. There's another large baobab which is about 47 meters in circumference, and that is currently housing a pub and is known as the Baobab Pub. So this tree is versatile, it is amazing to look at. It definitely makes you realize how small you are when you stand next to it and appreciate the fact that we have one of these present in Barbados as a rich part of our cultural history and a national monument.
There is something absolutely special about its jug-shaped trunk, ideally suited for storing water, which is an ideal adaptation in the dry savanna region of its native Africa.
Now, this massive trunk stores hundreds of liters of water. During the dry period, it can be tapped as a source of water for those people to use when the water is scarce. Now, here in Barbados, we don't put it to as many uses as they do in other places, but we do love to eat the fruit. Now, the common name for the baobab tree in Barbados is monkey tamarind or flower tamarind, as I knew it when I was growing up. The tree produces large, lovely, fleshy flowers, and these flowers, which are back pollinated, produce this remarkable oblong fruit. Now, the shape of the fruit does bear some resemblance to the mahogany pod, as you would see, but it's hard and gourd shaped, almost like a calabash. The outside of the fruit is smooth and brown with hairs like a brown velvet. And in the inside, unfortunately this one is empty so you can't see, but the inside has a number of seeds which are covered with a hard, white, flowery flesh. Now that flesh bears a remarkable similarity to the tamarind in taste. Now it's white and dry, so it's quite flowery, but it does taste nice and tangy like the tamarind. Now, in addition to tasting really well, the fruit also happens to be very rich in vitamin C. So it's not only tasty, but it's also good for you. Now we've been fortunate enough to receive clearly from the heavens a fruit from the baobab tree. Now as you can see, there's that lovely brown fur on the outside. It's a nice, very solid oblong gourd. Now the taste of this fruit is without comparison. I mentioned before that it does taste very similar to the tamarind, but it's one of those things where it's quite close but no cigar. Now if you do want to try the fruit from the baobab tree, I would recommend coming down around this time of year, so December, January, maybe up until April. But please do not go climbing the tree and breaking any branches trying to pick the fruit. When the fruit is ready, it simply falls from the tree. Now the good thing about the fruit falling is that when it falls, it cracks. So you don't need to go banging it on any rock. You don't need to get a hammer to break it open. You can simply just force it open. Now I am delighted. When I tell you that I love this fruit, that is an understatement. Now you can see why it's called flower tamarind, because it has that white and very flowery and crumbly textures. You can see it's breaking off. It's actually segmented as though it was a citrus. You know how citrus will have that kind of stringy, pathy segments dividing the fruit into pieces? This is the exact same way. So it's divided into little segments and the fruit are enmeshed in this white, very powdery, corky material. Now because I can't resist, it's a very dry fruit, so you really have to, work with it a little bit. But once you have it wet, it has a sweet, and oh, you know what it tastes like? Do you know those tamarinds that are sold in the supermarket, which are described as sweet tamarinds? They're not as sour as our local tamarinds, but they have a very sweet, mellow taste. This is almost exactly what that tastes like.
After secretly tasting the fruit, Carla brought it over to share with the entire crew, and she sought our opinion about its taste.
Sherwood, this amazing fruit is not to be missed. I want you to describe it for me in 3 words. Well, first I want to know if you've ever tasted anything quite like it, what it seems similar to, and then describe the taste for me in 3 words. Here you go, Andrew, have some of this. Takes a little bit of work. No, we can't lose these seeds. Don't spit them out. We're gonna plant all of these seeds.
Tastes like tamarind.
Similar to tamarind. You see, this is how things go in Barbados. One's one, but they have some everybody want.
The structure looks like a soursop though.
Yeah, it does have a slight kind of sour taste. It's not as pithy as the soursop, but
Looks like tamarind.
A little bit like a tamarind, a little bit.
Piece of breadfruit.
the fruit from the breadfruit, the fruit from the baobab tree is called monkey bread in Africa, but Barbados has changed that a little bit and we commonly call it monkey breadfruit. So it doesn't really taste like a breadfruit, but Bajans add words to things. So you have monkey bread and we call it monkey breadfruit. John, you don't seem very impressed.
No, I thought it was pretty good actually.
Yeah, it's very good.
Now we have some seeds. At least these didn't pass through the elephant.
No, they certainly didn't. And once you've eaten it, you have a round, brown, kidney-shaped seed left back. Now, I've been told that the seeds are very easy to germinate, although you may have to plant quite a few because they are not all viable. So many of them will start to grow, but you're going to lose quite a few along the way. So if you do get your hands on a pod, crack it open, eat the flesh, savor it, share it with everybody you know so that they will get a chance to experience it, and take each one of these seeds and plant them, because it's an amazing tree, and I think it's about time that we had more than the 2 major ones we currently have growing in Barbados. But it's an amazing fruit, even if it's not something where you would commonly eat. It does taste, it's an interesting taste, and you should at least try it once. So we recommend that you come down here, try it once. Again, don't go climbing the tree and breaking down branches and licking them down with a stick. You just come, if you're fortunate enough, there will be some laying on the floor. You pick it up, crack it open. Don't wash it off because it's floury, so you end up washing away the fruit. pick it up, crack it open, and have at it.
More.
You really should come here at some point in time and taste the fruit. Remember, you will not throw stones towards the tree. You will not climb it. You simply will wait until the fruit has fallen to the ground. Meanwhile, Carla continues as she talks about a recent trend that is somewhat disturbing.
In Barbados, the tree has reached an additional significance. It's also become quite important to tourism. And if you're passing through the Warrens area, you would notice many tour operators stop and give visitors the opportunity to see the tree and to tell them a little bit about the history. Unfortunately, as you can see, the tree is being defaced. There's some kind of culture, I'm not sure exactly what, but people are carving their names into the trunk, they're carving the date. And while you can understand, the human relevance, you see something so magnificent, you think it's going to last forever, and you'd like to put your name on it to be a part of that longevity, it's in essence damaging the tree and defacing what is an important part of Barbadian history and which is actually one of the wonders of our culture. So I'm going to make a plea and ask people, when you see the tree, you come, sit under it, stand, walk around it, touch it, enjoy it, but please leave it exactly as you found it.
And we certainly did enjoy being under the Baobab tree. Thankfully, its significance to the Barbadian landscape has reached the masses. And their appreciation of the tree was exemplified in their response to news of what had appeared to be an apparent uncertain future for the tree during the latest road improvements in the area.
As an example of how much this tree is treasured by Barbadians and Barbadian society, recent expansion of the roadway, which passes just alongside it in Warrens, was carefully organized so that there would be no damage to the tree itself. There was actually quite a large branch that overhung the road, and it was surgically removed, very carefully considered, to ensure that there was no damage to the tree and that there would be no damage to vehicles as they were passing underneath. So it is clear that great care and attention has been paid so far to the preservation of this tree, and we would definitely like to see that continue.
Now, earlier in the program, Carla did refer to the Baobab tree as the tree of life. Recently, this tree inspired heraldic artist Anne Rudder to create an interesting piece of heraldry titled, "Behold, I am Isis, the tree of life."
To create a grand tree of orderly expression to represent our central axis of humanity. A Barbados blackbelly sheep hide is rendered to illustrate an imaginative image of the cosmic tree that penetrates 3 zones of heaven, earth, and underworld, with roots seeking the waters of life.
And so from the Baobab tree here in Warrens, we turn our attention to yet another interesting and somewhat decorative tree found on a few locations around the island.
The Cannonball tree is a native of northern South America, and it's found typically in the areas surrounding the Amazon basin. It's fascinating in the way in which it produces its inflorescences. This tree exhibits cauliflowery, and if we look at it, we can see these long ropey structures are the inflorescences. Other plants that exhibit cauliflowery are the pawpaw, the cocoa, and the calabash trees, where they all produce their flowers and fruit on the trunks of the trees. But this does it in a truly magnificent and outstanding style. These ropey structures can be up to 6 feet long, and the flowers are produced along the stalk. And if we look at the flower, it's a unique type of flower. Here is the flower of the Cannonball tree, a unique structure in the plant world. This is like a sea anemone, a sophisticated sea anemone, but it's actually called the androphore, and these are staminodes that produce sterile pollen known as fodder pollen. In the top of the flower here, we have the staminal disc, and in the center we have the pistil. Pollen produced by these structures here is transferred to the pistil, and pollination is typically done by bats or by a particular type of bee in its native habitat in South America. We're not quite sure what actually pollinates them here in Barbados. It could be bats, or it could be what we know as the bumblebees. But what happens is as the pollinator goes for the fodder pollen produced in this area, they transfer pollen from here to the pistil, and consequently the flower is pollinated. Now let's see if we can find, okay, if we look here, these are flowers that would essentially have been pollinated. The petals, these petals here, have already been shed, and this is what is going to develop into the fruit, which is known as the cannonball, hence the name Cannonball tree. If we look higher up into the tree, we can now see the actual developing fruit. There are not a large number on this tree. Sometimes the tree is just simply covered with cannonballs, and they're in different stages of development. They can be anywhere from 4 to 8 inches in diameter.
Well, this fruit reminds me of a mammy apple. Now the question is often asked, what about the fruit from the cannonball tree? Could it be eaten like how we eat the fruit from the Baobab tree?
The fruit of the cannonball tree is not edible. When the fruit fall in their native habitat, they split open, and in the Amazon region, peccaries typically eat the fruit. The seeds of the fruit are covered with special hairs that allow them to pass through the intestinal tract and not be digested, and thereby when the animal defecates, it spreads the seeds hopefully wide and far. So animal dispersal is the way in which this plant is dispersed in its native habitat. The flowers, I should mention, are quite fragrant, and the early morning or late evening there's quite a strong, pleasant scent that drifts across the landscape from these trees. Hence, their potential use as interesting landscape trees in big gardens or botanic type gardens.
There are not many cannonball trees on the island, and very few of those are found in public spaces. One such is to be found here in Sunset Crest, St. James. Dr. John Webster lists the other spots where those cannonball trees are found.
It's not a common tree, but there's this one here at the Chattel Village that anyone can come and see. There's one next to the Treasury Building in Bridgetown, and there are 2 of them at the hospital in the little arboretum that was created there many years ago when the hospital was originally built. There are several others scattered around the island as well.
And there's one to be found on the grounds of Upton House in St. Michael, where the pirate Stede Bonnet lived. Today it is now the home of Senator Professor Sir Henry Fraser.
This tree was actually given to me by a local nurseryman, Stephen Thomas, and was planted in 1980. So this tree is a mere 33 years old, and it's already 60-something feet tall. Splendid tree. And of course it fascinates everyone because it's such an unusual, beautiful tree. It's one of the great ones. Some of them are huge. The biggest one in Barbados is the one at Government House, which is 200 years old, brought into Barbados almost certainly by the great botanist who was working with the governor at the time, Lord Seaforth, in 1800 to 1810. And so that tree is about 200 years old. It's a lovely tree on the southwestern corner of the rear lawn at Government House, and it's always covered with flowers and cannonballs. There are others. There's one at Villanova, there's one at Bottles in St. George. But this is a deciduous tree. It sheds its leaves completely in the dry season, and about 6 weeks ago it was absolutely bare, not a single leaf on it. So there's a carpet of leaves on the ground. And again, like the cotton tree, the leaves go yellow very quickly, and within a week it's leafless, and 2 weeks later you see the appearance of the lovely leaf buds, and then it's in full leaf once again. So everything about this tree is magical and it's beautiful.
And you could well imagine why these trees would be sought after by the horticulturalist, botanist, and the plant lovers.
Well, typically in gardens for their aesthetic value and their curiosity value. So there we have the Cannonball tree, one of the more interesting and unique trees in the landscape of Barbados.
There you have it, the sacred Baobab tree and the peculiar Cannonball tree, all occupying spaces here on our beautiful island. As always, I'm glad that you have chosen to spend the last 30 minutes with my guest. I'm Sherwood McCaskie. Until next week at the same time when we come around with another program in the series of Trees, the Silent Sentinels, I'm gone in search of more trees.